It is my belief that every conservative Christian or moderate Christian should at some point visit a progressive church. Today we're going to talk about why. Hello everyone, I'm Landon Reynolds and I'm a confirmed American Baptist, and today we're going to be talking about why I believe you should visit a progressive church. Even if you're conservative or moderate or not a progressive generally, I think you should still visit a progressive church at some point. Now, for context, I am not a progressive or a conservative, really. I'm more of a moderate, as are most American Baptists, albeit to varying degrees. So, just for a couple things, so you know kind of where I stand on things. I do affirm women's ordination. I do believe that women can be pastors and deacons and all that. But I still would draw the line and say that homosexual actions are a sin, although I don't think that existing as a homosexual is sinful necessarily. I think that as long as you don't act on it, you can still be homosexual. I don't really believe that's something you can control. I think that's something that's kind of just messed up in some people's heads, that they're prone to that sin in particular. But yeah, I would draw the line at homosexuality. With that being said, I don't believe that if you are a practicing homosexual, that you are not saved, provided you have faith in Christ. I think your faith in Christ still saves you. I think you're wrong for practicing homosexuality, but I think that's between you and God, and I think that if you genuinely have faith in Christ, you are still saved. Now, with that being said, now that we've established what I think and we've got some context, now let's get to why that I believe if you are a moderate or a conservative, you should visit a progressive church. For one, it helps you to see progressive Christians as real people with real beliefs and real reasons for holding to those beliefs, as opposed to just like these villainous characters or these figures, like these hypothetical figures that are like these villains trying to destroy the church. I think that a lot of the time it is really easy for conservative Christians to think of progressives as kind of like this single-minded, abstract kind of evil force that is just infiltrating the church, trying to destroy the church and bring it down from the inside. I hear this sentiment a lot, particularly of those of the Reconquista movement that's going around. And I don't really think that that is a very helpful or productive way to think about progressives. They are individuals, and they do have reasons, usually not malicious, for holding to the beliefs that they have. You may not agree with those beliefs, and I often don't either. But that doesn't mean that they don't have good reasons and that they're ill-intentioned. I don't believe that most of them are. Sure, maybe a couple of them are. I don't really know what their motivation would be for being malicious and trying to infiltrate the church, but I'm sure they're out there because Satan tries to attack the church in many various ways. But generally, it is my belief that they are real good Christians. They just tend to disagree with us on a couple things. Now, the reverse can apply to progressives as well. They can demonize the other side and say that the conservatives are the evil ones who are trying to spread hate and bigotry and do all this stuff that they like to accuse the conservatives of. If you believe that all conservative Christians are evil, and you're a progressive, maybe it's time for you to visit a conservative church and hear them out as well. This can apply to you as well, and I'm sure that for many progressives it probably does. Now, I'm going to go on the defense for progressive theology for a minute here as well. By and large, progressive Christians are still very orthodox. They're still Trinitarians. They're even often creedal if we're talking about the mainline Protestant versions of progressive Christianity. They're often even creedal, so they can be even more orthodox a lot of the time than many evangelical churches. But, yes, the radical Sparkle Creed groups that are heretical and blasphemous oftentimes, they do exist in progressive circles. They're just not nearly as prominent as a lot of people like to make them out to be. They're not even close to a majority in any mainline Protestant denomination. Most mainline Protestant denominations are full of Christians who would be generally more progressive than Christians who would be in other denominations. But that does not mean that they're heretics. That doesn't mean they're going around chanting the Sparkle Creed all the time. That's just not really the situation of how it actually is. That's a caricature, and it's a harmful one at that, because progressive Christians, I know of many of them, they're not that way a lot of the time. They're not actually that way. I would say even a majority of them are actual Orthodox Christians. Now, also, conservatives have heretical minorities as well. I think of Christian nationalists. I think of the prosperity gospel. I think of, oneness Pentecostals. All of these groups would be generally associated with the more conservative forms of Christianity. And they are heretical as well. But do those things define all conservative Christians? Does that mean all conservative Christians are Christian nationalists or prosperity gospel or oneness Pentecostal? Of course it doesn't. You know that, I know that. But they exist. They exist. Does that disprove conservative Christianity? No. So the radical minorities in progressive Christianity don't disprove progressive Christianity either. No, because you can't judge a group by its radical minorities. That's the definition of a straw man. When you use the worst version of a thing, or the worst version of a thing that exists in that thing, as a way to say that the whole thing is false. That is a straw man. That is not helpful. That's just bad. That's not good argument against anything, really. Now, I don't want to defend progressives too much. I think that they do have their shortcomings a lot of the time, and this, of course, doesn't apply to all of them. It's nuanced, but many progressive Christians struggle with being too soft on sin. They don't like to call out sin when it does exist. That, of course, has to do with progressive theology, but I think that's an error of progressive theology, is treating sin too softly. Another error of progressive theology, in my belief, is I think they're bad at holding the line on doctrine. They are too quickly to compromise. They're too quickly to change their theological, I guess, seriousness would be the term I'm looking for. They're not as theologically serious as conservatives often tend to be. I think that's a bad thing. I think that it's something they could fix. I think that it's possible to be theologically serious while also being a little more progressive. But yeah, they tend to be bad at holding the line on theology. They tend to be bad at holding the line on sin. And also, there's a tendency towards universalism, which that kind of coincides with all the things else that I said are shortcomings of progressive Christians. Now, to be clear, since I know that there are universalists who watch this channel from time to time, I am not claiming that universalism is a heresy. I just believe it to be wrong, and I believe it to be an error. If you're a universalist, you are still saved if you believe the essentials of the faith, which we know what those are. The Trinity, as expressed in the creeds, and you have to have a regenerative faith in Christ. If you have those things, you are saved, no matter what else you might be wrong about. As long as the triune God is your only God, and that's the God whom you serve, and you have a relationship with Jesus Christ, you're good, you're saved, and no one can ever take that away from you, and don't you let anyone tell you otherwise. So, every Christian tradition has its weak points. That doesn't make them any less Christian. So these weak points that we have discussed of the progressive Christians, that doesn't make them any less Christian. They believe the essentials, usually. at least in their normal forms. They believe the essentials. They usually have real faith in Christ, and they do their best to live for Jesus and do God's will as far as they understand it. Now, if you don't think that they're Christian for various doctrinal reasons, even though they're fully Trinitarian and they have faith in Christ, that's fine to think that. You're not a heretic for thinking that. That is just a denial of sola fide, or the idea that salvation is by faith alone, which I hold to. So if you also hold to the sola fide doctrine, I want you to seriously. And not as Martin Luther understood it. I know that he understood it differently than Baptists understand it. But Martin Luther didn't believe in sola fide. And don't tell me that Martin Luther coined sola fide. That was a 20th century Sunday school invention. The traditional Protestant view might not be sola fide, but it is the traditional Baptist view. And that is what sola fide means. Sola means only, and fide means faith. Faith alone. You are saved by faith alone. So anyway, if you still think that progressive Christians are these evil boogeymen after watching this video, and you don't believe me, that is fine. Go visit them, visit a progressive church, and see for yourself what they believe and what they teach. Hear them out, hear their reasoning, and see for yourself. The point of this video wasn't to convince you otherwise, that they're not bad. That wasn't my intention here. It wasn't to get you to like progressives more. It was simply to get you to visit them, meet them, hear them out, hear their arguments, and then decide your opinion on them. So you may find out that you agree with them more than you thought you would. You might learn something. And hey, you might even decide that they're still bad news and that you still don't want to have anything to do with them going forward. And that is totally fine. You are entitled to that belief. That's between you and God. It's okay to disagree with them, and it's even okay to not like them. But at least understand the thing that you're disagreeing with and disliking before you form an opinion on it. And this goes for anything in any category. You should always know what you're talking about before you try to form an opinion on it. Now, FYI, I like conservative Christians just as much as I like liberal Christians. Both have their strengths and weaknesses. Both have their contributions to Christendom. I think that conservatives are a lot better at holding the line on doctrine than progressives are. But I also think that progressives are better at doing the love your neighbor aspects. They're better at the charity often, the charity aspect of Christianity. They're better at those things. Conservatives are better at having solid doctrine and having integrity with their beliefs and really holding the line on things that you need to hold the line on. They might hold the line in places that I don't think they need to hold the line, but in general, that is something they're very good at, and I admire them for. So both have their strengths and weaknesses. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying the goodness of conservative Christianity. This video is just specifically in defense of progressive Christianity in particular. Many well-respected names defend the conservative Christians all of the time. Progressive Christianity is, in my opinion, heavily underrepresented. And I, as a moderate Christian, would like to see that change. Now, I'm going to do everything in my power to change that through the platform that I happen to have. But that about concludes my thoughts for today on why I think you should visit progressives and why I think you should hear them out. Really, it's just all about having a better understanding of people. It's not about liking people or disliking people. It's about understanding them, respecting them, listening to them, and generally being a more educated and just good, valuable person in society. But if you do happen to have an opinion different from mine, or if you have anything to add, I do welcome you to leave a comment in the comment section below, of course, and I will respond to that as soon as I am able to. And if you really want to keep the discussion going on this matter, I also invite you to join my Discord server. I will leave a link in the description below to that if you are interested. And if you do enjoy this type of content, or if you've benefited from it in any way and you would like to see more of it, I do invite you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the videos I post in the future. But that's all from me today, guys. Thank you for joining me. God bless you. Stay faithful.